I'm here today to show you this remarkably normal looking boombox that's really anything but. However, if somebody had this machine on display alongside a load of others at a boombox meetup, it'd be totally understandable if you didn't give this one a second glance. As far as the functions go, well, the radio, it's a simple AM/FM tuner with no presets or digital display. Perhaps the coolest thing about it is the little red light on the tuning needle. Now, as well as the radio, the only other features on here are the cassette and an auxiliary input. I don't know if 3 controls are enough to call this a graphic equalizer. The 4th slider here is the balance control, and the sound quality from this thing, well, it can best be described as bearable. So at first glance, it's a bare bones and uninspiring portable radio cassette. But wait, there's more. It does conceal one feature that you won't find in any other boombox. Yes, this, to the best of my knowledge, is the only boombox with a 5-cassette auto changer, and it comes from a company that you probably wouldn't put near the top of the list if you were listing off boombox or even hi-fi manufacturers, Mitsubishi. However, back in the 1980s, especially the earlier part of the 80s, Mitsubishi were one of those companies that liked to innovate in the hi-fi space. Perhaps their products weren't the highest of hi-fi, but they'd like to compete on features and originality rather than ultimate sound fidelity. They were playing their own game, and for a while it seemed to work. They did love their cassette changers too. They tended to use a 7-cassette changer mechanism, and you can find this inside a number of Mitsubishi mini systems or separates like this twin tape machine. I don't know if I can really call it a twin tape machine when there's up to 8 tapes inside, but you know what I mean. Anyway, by now you might know how much I like my cassette changers. It's been one of the favourite categories of products I like to explore and show on the channel. Now, over the years I've featured some amazing examples of changers from companies such as Panasonic, Sony and Philips, and there are plenty more out there too. But there's one that people regularly discover for the first time and then send me links to, and those are the Pioneer toast rack changers, so called because of the way they hold the cassettes. Now again, like the Mitsubishi machines, there were a range of these produced over the years. Pioneer tended to use a 6-changer mechanism, and a few years ago I did briefly own one of these, but unfortunately the first tape I put in it got jammed inside, and upon opening it the whole thing just self-destructed, springs and bits of plastic flying everywhere. My previous experience with Pioneer decks up to that point had been extremely positive, and it led me to think that they built their machines like tanks, but this experience tarnished that reputation. By the time they were making their 1990s changers, it seems the craftsmanship had left the building. These things were irreparable, plastic trash on the inside, and I'm surprised it ever worked in the first place. Now, I had wondered if the Mitsubishi changer mechanism was the same as the Pioneer toast rack one, but fortunately you can see from the different orientation of the cassettes in their respective loading drawers that they are different from one another. Now, I believe this boombox dates from 1986, and the changer used here has been reduced to a 5-cassette mechanism in order to fit it inside a portable device, but in every other way it operates in the same manner as the other Mitsubishi cassette changers. I'd imagine when most people were to look at the front panel of this for the first time, they'd just assume it was a dual tape deck machine. Once the drawer has closed, though, you're able to see how the tape playing section is the part on the right, and the tapes are pulled across from the rack on the left into this position, and then they're pushed further back into the machine to engage them with the single tape mech. You'll also see how the drawer is an integral part of the changer. It's not just used during that initial loading of the tapes into the machine, it actually moves in and out of the front in order to transfer the tapes to and from the player section. Now, this is different to how the Pioneer system works. With that one, once the tapes are loaded, everything from there on happens within the players. With the Mitsubishi system, you do need to keep some space free in front of the machine so that it can do its thing. So we've got this deck mode switch up here. Now, if you were just to put one cassette in this machine, set that to single and press play, it will just play through that side of the tape and stop. Now, you can select the other side by pressing this direction button, and then it would play all the way through the other side and stop. However, if you move it into auto reverse, it plays both side A, then side B. But then, if you move it to auto changer, it will play side A and B of all the tapes inside the machine. For a bit of an experiment, I want to try recording something onto tape, but rather than use the radio, I want to plug something into the input on the back panel. So here we have the RCA plugs for in and out, and the input can be switched between phono and line level. There's also a ground connector next to that one, so you can attach it up to a record player without a built-in phono preamp. And while I've got it spun around, I'll just mention it can be powered from 9D cells. It also uses 2 AA batteries as well, and since it doesn't have radio presets or a clock, I'm going to assume that those are something to do with the loader mechanism being able to remember its current state after a power cycle. Now, this machine came from the US. It was very generously sent over by a lovely chap called Jamie, who even went to the trouble of taking it apart to get it working properly before he sent it. He sent me a quick video to explain some things I should look out for, so massive thanks to him. But with this being a US model, I've got to mention I could run it from a step-down power converter or batteries, but since it's got the option for DC power, I've powered it via a 12-volt adapter. Now, as you'd expect from the design of this thing, the speakers are detachable, which of course helps with stereo separation, although overall the sound they produce isn't brilliant. It's kind of pretty hollow and boxy, in fact. The whole thing really just sounds exactly how it looks. One interesting little feature or limitation of note is this switch that's on the base. This ensures that the changer mechanism can only operate once the boombox has been placed on a flat surface. So you won't be changing any tapes whilst doing something like this. Incidentally, this portable radio cassette player that John Cusack holds aloft in the movie Say Anything has been identified to be a Toshiba RT-SX1, which, if that's true, it does have a slightly different colour scheme to this one, but whilst that's a perfectly pleasant little machine, it's not really the kind of thing that's going to blow anyone away. Now, seeing this system like this with the speakers detached reminds me of how I used to have my system in my bedroom back in the day. I had a JVC boombox and I did the same thing. I had the speakers detached. I think I had a CD player linked into the auxiliary port on that one as well, but same kind of idea as this. It was a cheap way of getting a small hi-fi one that you could transport. What I'm doing here though, I've plugged my Walkman into the auxiliary port. And the idea behind that is that I'm going to record onto tapes, and I want to see if it's able to do auto-reverse multiple cassette recording. The idea being that it would record on one tape, then on another one. I'm going to put one tape in there, another one next to it, close this up. I'm going to record off the auxiliary onto these tapes. I'll have it set to auto-changer and auto-reverse. So ideally, if I press record now, it'll put the first tape in and start recording, and hopefully it'll record side A, then side B, and then swap to the next tape. Now, of course, the issue with something like this is that you're going to get quite a big delay every now and then. You're going to have to go through the run out on a tape before it realises it's got to the end. Then it'll do the auto-reverse, you go on the run in again, and then it'll start recording. Now when it gets to the end, it's going to have to go through that whole changer mechanism. So you're going to lose quite a bit of your recording. It's not going to be a continuous thing, but just imagine if you were out and you wanted to record off the radio, you put 5 cassettes in here with 90 minutes each. You could record like the whole day virtually. Yeah, so that worked. It recorded on both sides of both tapes, so you could put 5 90-minute tapes in here and record for 450 minutes. After playing around with this cassette deck for a while, it's become apparent that it's got more features than it's letting on. If you were just to look at the front here, you'd think stop, play, rewind, fast forward and pause. However, if I press the nice touch control for play here and get the music playing, we can skip forward or back tracks by pressing fast forward or rewind, as long as it's in the play position first. So now it's looking for the next track along. Once it hears the silence between them, it's now engaged play, and there you go, that's the next track along. In addition to that, once you get to the end of a side of a tape, quite often you'll get a bit of silence, because the sides won't match in length. Well, if this hears 20 seconds worth of silence, it will do an automatic blank skip. It will automatically fast forward to the end of the tape, and if you've got auto-reverse engaged, it will then play the other side to minimise the amount of time you have to wait between the music ending on one side and the music starting on the other. So yeah, nice little tape deck really. The thing that gets me about this is how remarkably unremarkable it is as a boombox once you take away that cassette mechanism. I mean, once you put it all back together like this, as far as like the whole construction and the fit and finish and everything, very plasticky, very basic, and then all of a sudden you've got this thing in there that's like from a different galaxy. This is the only boombox that has this 5 cassette mechanism in it. I don't know of any other boomboxes with a cassette changer system. And yet, they've put it in a really basic system. One that, if it was just that with one cassette deck, you'd say, well, that was a rubbish boombox. All of a sudden, you stick this thing in, and it just elevates the whole thing, because it's like, well, why didn't you put that in something better, or why didn't you make this better to match that? Just, it's an incongruous addition to a very basic boombox. So there you have it, that's your look at the Mitsubishi TX-L50, a unique boombox that hides an intriguing secret, a 5-cassette auto changer mechanism. I've got to give massive thanks again to Jamie for sending this one over, and I hope you've enjoyed seeing it in action here today, but that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.